All right, hello. Welcome to week 7. We have a lot on our plate today, so I'm just gonna get started. All right. Okay. Discord. Gonna switch to Discord view. Gonna do this. All right. So of course we have the same same thing as usual. Almost. Okay. So I have the to-do list up. Um, Obviously here at the meeting. The sharing a discussion that's grouped into one channel, and I will explain that in a second. Quizzes up on Canvas. I do want to remind you that your writing assignment is due next week. I haven't checked to see if anyone has turned theirs in yet, but just a reminder, it's due next week. Okay. Um, and then I'll talk about the final project. So let me switch my Zoom sharing. Share and Google Chrome. Okay. All right. So your final assignment. This is due week 10, pretty much the Monday at 11:59. Okay. So essentially, what this is you'll create your own mini art history. Um, like we talked about last week, art history has its own biases and such, and I want you to have your own bias for it. Okay, what's important to you. So the goal is to present 10 artworks with a theme. Okay, so what I mean by theme, it could be broad, but you don't want to pick 10 random things. So maybe you want something like 10 themes with, or 10 paintings that are blue, for example, or 10 paintings about, I don't know, like urns from the 1930s in Austria, something like that. Um, I would say the more specific, the better. So you could do more research, and it would make more. How would you say it? Like it'd just be easier. It's easier to focus on smaller subjects than larger subjects. Otherwise, you'll be too overwhelmed with choices, which is a huge problem that many people in this generation have. Okay. So for each, you'll have an image of it, the title, artist name, and year, and then about a paragraph about information on it. Okay. How you deliver it, it's up to you. You're going to propose that by week 9. So you could do stuff like a live stream like I'm doing now. You can make a slideshow with video on it, a video presentation, video game, comic, online gallery, and I have a link to different online resources on um, online tools that you can use. A lot of them are free. That's really cool. Okay, and so how I will grade it will depend on your individual project, but I will give the proposal 10 points, and that's due week 9. Um, you should get it done as soon as possible, but that's week 9 is just the last day to do it, which means everyone's going to do it week 9 because that's what I would probably do. But I would encourage you to submit a proposal as soon as possible. Um, what will happen is you'll propose that to me. That's either like a personal chat with me, like a DM through Discord or an email. You could make a sketch of it. You could just type it out. We could also do a video call or voice call as well. That's pretty much up to you. I want to keep this open, the delivery method open, just because I feel like people would be more engaged that way. Okay. Also, I'll allow collaborations between 2 people. Then you'll have to present 20 images. Okay, so I do encourage collaborations because we are in this weird time, and I would suspect that it's good to get used to online skills essentially. So being able to communicate with someone remotely is a good skill to have. So I would encourage that kind of thing. Okay. So yeah, if you have any questions, just ask me on Discord. All right. So then I'll go back to, or then I'll go to the slideshow. Oops, which I don't. Let me do that. Okay, that's opening up in Safari. 1 minute, please. Copy and paste. Okay. So yeah, hold on, let me see. I can't see the chat right now. Maybe I can't. No. Can someone like speak and let me know that they can see the PowerPoint, please?
I can see it.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so today's discussion is basically, what do you want from art? Oh, I forgot to give the slides colors. It's hecka boring. I'm just kidding. So there's a lot of material, so I'm gonna try to go as quickly as I can, but it's probably not gonna happen because this is very, well, I'll just get on with it. Okay, so again, this is what I said last week. You will only get out of art what you put into it. If you don't put any effort into enjoying an artwork or appreciating an artwork or analyzing it, you're not going to get much out of it. If you just look at it right away and judge it and that's it, you're not going to get much out of this piece, all right? So now that you're taking this class, you should be looking at artwork more critically and thinking more about it rather than just before, if you just said, oh, I like this and don't have a reason why. You shouldn't be doing that anymore. It will be really sad for everyone. Okay, so this page extrapolates why you think or how you should approach your artwork, or not how you should, how you could approach your artwork. So if you like something or if you don't like something, like consider all the elements and principles of it. Think about the meaning, do research on it. Just there's a lot of different things you can do to enhance your appreciation, enjoyment, or understand why you dislike something. So I think it's really important to not only just look at the work, but also assess the whys of why you enjoy it, why you don't enjoy it. Okay. As far as artwork that you like, it's pretty easy to assess that, because you could apply the elements and principles and see how those work for you, or and even you can even critique it, how you think you could be even better than it already is. Okay. A good way to really articulate your thoughts is telling a non-artist why you like it, because they won't have the vocabulary and understanding. But teaching something to people is a really good way of really knowing how to, or really knowing your subject matter that you're teaching, right? Um, so again, teaching someone who is not necessarily educated about art, I would say that's one of the most effective ways of really understanding what you like about something. Again, do research, write about how it makes you feel, give it a kiss. That always helps. Okay. So most of the focus on this lecture is about art that a lot of people don't like. And because again, it's easier to talk about why we like works because a lot of the elements and principles apply, and we can sort of and we have this positive bias towards it. So in videos about modern art, a lot of people are very angry about it. So in the context of this class, modern art doesn't really mean what people think it means, but they're usually talking about contemporary art, if you want to get more technical about it. Contemporary art is basically 1950s, mid-century until the present. and the century before then, like mid 1800s to mid 1900s, that's in terms of art history more of what's considered modern art. Okay, that's if you want to get more technical about it. Um, but when most people talk about modern art, they usually just mean what's present today. And they usually mean stuff that's different than, let's say, the Italian Renaissance. Um, and they're usually saying it in a very negative sense. Okay, so I have two videos of old white men complaining about the state of art today. They're really good examples of bad videos. Um, it's mostly just complaining. So the reason these videos suck, I'm just going to paraphrase this, is first of all they have blanket statements about modern art. They talk about the most extreme examples. Like, for example, they talk about like urinals that are made into art. Like, that doesn't represent most modern art. So they go after the ones, or they criticize the artworks in the videos that are the most extreme examples of what modern art could be, right? So they have this straw man argument. Straw man argument meaning they set up an argument that makes the other side look weak. Okay, and that's a huge problem. And they're also grouping all of modern art into one category of all this radical, crazy art, when actually there's a lot of different art within, sorry, modern art, that, and a lot of it they would certainly enjoy. And so they're unfairly bringing up modern art to mean something that's more extreme than it really is. It's really diverse. Okay. The second point, they're not acting in good faith. So they're just spouting out opinions, and they don't actually try to understand these artists. They just talk about more or less. So in the second video with Morley Safer, he does ask questions of the artists, but he kind of just writes them off and saying, "Oh, they're talking pretentious nonsense," which is not completely false. A lot of art speak is very, how would you say it, like kind of insider baseball. They just, like, a lot of it is very, how, what's the word I'm looking for? Um, like, you kind of have to be in the club to understand it, which I personally don't like. Um, and some of it is kind of garbage like that, but not all of it, certainly. And so they just don't want to understand it, and they have these opinions, and they're sticking to them without actually really trying to understand, which is a big pet peeve of mine, right? Just making up your mind before and not willing to change it. I don't like that. Okay, and they have your very specific views of what art should be, and they mistake that for what they value. So maybe they really prefer classical paintings with high amount of skill that reflects real life. It's realistic, and maybe they don't really like conceptual sculptures or whatever. Um, and they also have this authority about them, saying like this is how art should be, when really this is what they're looking for in art. They're looking for classical standards. They're looking for like more tradition than radical new gestures, which is fine. But the problem with this is that they're respected and influential. I mean, they're both dead now, but they, in that position, being television hosts for 60 Minutes, I believe both of them are, um, or were, they're dead now. Having that position of authority automatically makes them an expert in people's eyes, which is not true. The first guy, Andy Rooney, says like he doesn't know much about art, but he's giving us his opinion, right? Um, and that would be fine. He does admit having an opinion, but he just doesn't really, again, try to understand this. You know, he doesn't say like, "Oh, this is maybe not for me; it's for other people." He just says it's crap, and that's pretty hurtful to the world of art, honestly. That's doing a very large disservice to many artists, especially ones who are modern artists that he would probably enjoy. Okay, so again, let me move my mug out of the way. Okay, so what to learn from this video? Again, blanket statements and judgments are very unhelpful. Um, they they paint a wide picture of what everything is when really there's a lot of nuance in it. There's a lot of different types of modern art. There's a lot of different types of conceptual art. Some of it may be profoundly impactful on you, while others may just be kind of garbage to you. Okay, so I think it's important for people to consider individual pieces instead of the whole. For example, when I was on OK Cupid at one point, there was like a lot of people who said I like all music except country and hip hop. Um, I don't know why those two were reoccurring. Like, why not harsh noise wall or whatever, you know? Um, and my problem with that is, like, I'm sure there's at least one song in hip hop that you would enjoy if you're open to that, or same thing with country. Um, but just writing off something altogether kind of sucks in general, I would say. I use the music example because that's a pretty normal thing to come across, right? Um, yeah. So, like, for example, I grew up not liking classical because that's what old people listen to. But then I've been listening to the Sims soundtrack, the original Sims, the build music. It's really amazing stuff. And then that's was sort of a gateway. So because I opened my mind, like, okay, I actually like these like classical pieces, then it opened up an avenue to appreciate more music. Okay. Sweet. Okay. Consider many artworks not just extreme examples. Again, they were taking examples that were very much like outliers on the spectrum of what modern art is. Like, most modern art is pretty tame, and looks beautiful. I mean, that's subjective, of course, but a lot of it has really, really great use of principles and elements of design. Okay, so to combat this, look at the more moderate artwork. Okay, don't just look at the crazy stuff. Okay, this is the most important one to me by far, is be open to new ideas. Nothing bothers me more in general than people who are unwilling to change their views and being open up to new positions. Um, I think it's really important to do that, um, growing to grow as a human being. Like, one of the biggest reasons I broke up with my first boyfriend is he said something like, uh, I asked him, like, well, why don't you try something like different? Let's go to a new restaurant. He's like, I already know what I like. And he was like 38 at the time, and he's like, I don't need to like anything else new. And that was just like, what? Like, you're done as a human being. You don't want to experience anything else new. And that was just like a, a terrible moment. I was like, oh, okay, this has got to end soon. But yeah, honestly, I think this is a huge problem we're facing today, especially with like the current administration. Um, I try not to be explicit about politics. A lot of it's implicit, but um, like, Trump has made like factually wrong statements, as far as like injecting, what is it, like, cleaner into your system or whatever, and just saying like really outrageous stuff that has no basis in reality. And some of that, and he has apologized for some of it, which doesn't make up for the fact that some people did do that. What makes me upset is, like, people will stick to his word no matter what. They won't be open to the fact that, okay, like, these doctors who have been dealing with this and have been like doing years of schooling of this, they might actually be right instead of Trump, you know. And that really upsets me. Okay, like people can believe in Trump, whatever, but only keeping that one point of view and not um, being open to others is what bothers me a lot. Same thing with art. Um, these old white men are just like looking at classical examples of art and think that should be the standard, as opposed to like being empathetic and thinking, okay, like what about this makes this interesting? Why do people actually like this? I mean, some of it is dictated by the art market and trends, and um, sometimes it's a bunch of BS, but being open to some new things, I think, is extremely important as an artist. And even though maybe a lot of you aren't artists or aspire to be artists, just being open to new things in general is extremely important. Especially since you're at a community college right now, you have to be open to new ideas. Okay. You don't necessarily have to agree with them. Um, that's really important, but being open to the idea and listening to the other side is important. Unless it's a position of hate, that needs to be shut down right away. There should not be tolerance for hate at all. Uh, so yeah, really, really, really listen to people. Okay. But sometimes, like, you just don't like something and you really don't care. Honestly, that's fine. You don't have to, like, analyze everything. You don't have to care about everything. It might be worth it to just put your energy towards, like, a couple things you do like, or things that you really hate, and trying to understand why you hate them. Um, However, and this is really, really, really important and underrated, if you have a negative opinion of something, um, you don't need to express it. You really, really, really don't. Unless you have some critical advice that could be constructive or something that people or yourself can learn from. Okay, if you're just saying a negative opinion, like something sucks, like it does nothing to help anyone. I don't understand why people do that. Your opinions are not super important 100% of the time, right? Sometimes, like, I don't believe in the saying, if you don't have something good to say, don't say anything at all. If it's constructive, I feel like it's definitely worth saying, right? But if it's just spouting a dislike of something for no really good reason, then I don't think it's really necessary. Also, this is me saying this as an introvert, where I wish people would talk way less in general. But that's just my bias. But honestly, there's no need to really fill up the internet essentially with opinions that are negative and not helpful. Okay. All right, so let's talk a little bit about abstract art. So abstract art really gets people's blood boiling, especially old white men um, who are adhering to classical values of beauty. Okay. All right, so let's talk about abstraction really quickly. So, in a sense, everything is abstract when it's a painting. And what I mean by that is, on this painting, even though these cows are realistic, it's just literally paint, right? So it's not a real cow on this painting. So we have to abstract the what we see as a cow onto the canvas. Um, so a cow is a physical being that you can touch and hold and see, right? But it's a three-dimensional creature who exists in time. And if you're making a painting of a cow, then you have to put it on a two-dimensional canvas and freeze it in time. So it's not going to be the same. So what we're getting here is an idea of what a cow looks like. Okay. And so this is on the more naturalistic style of abstraction. On the very right hand side is a painting where that doesn't represent anything at all. Okay, it's just colors in certain areas. There's no attempt at rendering the world. Okay, so those are the far ends of the spectrum. Here, stylize, what that means is the artist doesn't try to replicate the world exactly as it is. They do it in their own form. They do it pretty much as they see it, but with a little bit of their own personal style on it. Okay, like this one, for example, is a little bit more flat than the world appears. Idealize, what that means is taking an idealized form of the human body. So I don't know exactly who this is a statue of or sculpture of. I don't know the difference between those two. I should look that up. I don't know exactly who that is, but it's an idealized male body form. So there's a lot of sculptures made of idealized human body forms. Um, and it's not actual reality. It's how the artist interprets what is perfect. And this depends on the context of which culture is speaking about it, right? Like some cultures really prefer, how do you say it? Um, like, I guess being fat, because that means you have enough money to have a surplus of food, and being fat means you're wealthy, and that's idealized, right? But this is, I think, Greek sculpture. I'm really bad at art history, and this is what they thought is ideal, right? And that probably persists today, what people think is ideal, which is a huge problem because diverse bodies are awesome. Okay, now to abstracted. So this isn't abstract, it's abstracted. And what this means is taking a cow in this sense and really breaking down the realism of it into something like really stylized. Okay. And this is taking it even further. So believe it or not, this is the same artist, Franz Marc. And this is this cow broken down into these shapes. So that's abstracted even further. Okay. Um, so again, we have a spectrum of abstraction. And that's something that could be talked about for a whole lecture easily. Okay. But when most people who are not artists talk about abstraction, they usually mean non-representational kind of work. And by representational, that essentially means things that refer to the real world. Okay. So that's what people mostly talk about when it comes to abstractions. And people who generally don't like the work, they also kind of feel it's more like random marks on the canvas instead of highly considered marks that use the elements and principles of design. A lot of them prefer to have some sort of concrete objects to attach to, so they have some understanding. If they don't have something that represents the real world in some way, they usually don't have something to identify with, and therefore think that it's probably not worth it because it requires too much work, or they just call the artist lazy. Okay. So why do people like abstraction? Elements and principles of the design, right? Just because it doesn't have representational elements, it could look awesome, right? Just like how people have patterned dresses or shirts or clothing or whatever that don't have like pictures. It's just like a really cool plaid, for example. Those have good elements and principles of design. Okay, so you could apply those same things to paintings as well, right? Um, I think this is a big one. The way it can make someone feel that's impossible to describe. This is the most true one for me. I don't know, something about looking at a really beautiful abstract painting just makes me feel like I'm staring into the void in a good way, or makes me feel like really light and like in the clouds, or just like can fill me with existential terror, or just like a tiny little being. Um, it's because that's what I value, that kind of stuff. Um, and the way the colors like physiologically and psychologically affect people can also work to make someone feel really empowered or tiny. So this artist, Mark Rothko, these are huge paintings. I didn't experience it with this to be quite frank, but a lot of people who love his artwork, um, they say you have to like stand right in front of it in order to get it, and they have sort of a holy experience. I believe that. I personally didn't have it with his paintings, but I have had it with other abstract paintings for sure. Okay. All right. So this is a painting by Ad Reinhardt called Abstract Painting Blue. Um, so this is something that's a very common comment, that like liking like something this is pretentious and you're just pretending to like it and you're a hipster and stuff like this. And I could do it. And how come I'm not famous if I could do it? So first of all, I will say that I wouldn't consider myself not a pretentious hipster. Like, I like things that hipsters generally like, and as an artist, you kind of have to be pretentious because you're telling, or you're convincing yourself and other people that you have enough skill that you're gonna impress people with your artwork, and that is honestly kind of pretentious in itself. So I would say I am a pretentious hipster, and I'm gonna own that. I don't care. Um, Actually, I do care, but I'm not gonna dispute that. Screw it, right? All right. So here's what I actually like about the painting. Um, so let me move this again. So blue is my favorite color. We know that it's my power color. Another thing is I really love subtleties. So this might have to do with the fact that I've been studying art for 10 years, and I've painted, and I know how hard it is to like do to be more subtle in your work. I do appreciate how this is darker than this, and there's little shadows here. So again, that probably has a lot to do with the fact that I've been studying art, and I do notice little things like that. Also, as a person, I'm extremely sensitive. Like, I get cold very easily, I get hot very easily. I also notice tiny details a lot more easily than, let's say, my roommate who doesn't have any art training, right? Um, and so just by being enveloped in art and studying art, I'm more sensitive towards the smaller details, right? So I can easily see why someone who isn't trained in art might not like this, because it's kind of boring. Um, but again, because of the fact that I do really love subtleties, that is something I like. And being someone who designs stuff, um, and let's say, like, okay, also take this for example, like if you have a favorite store or whatever, and they change the font that's kind of similar but different, you'll notice that. That happened with IKEA about a decade ago, I think. More people, like, the font just changed, like not too drastically, but people were really upset about it. Okay, so when you have elements of design that are very particular and there's a little bit of change, you'll notice that a lot more. In the Understanding Comics book by Scott McCloud that I've talked about, that's called Amplification Through Simplification, where the simple things stand out more. Okay, so if there was a lot of like cartoon characters on this, the blue would be kind of inconsequential. You would be concentrating more on the cartoon characters, and it would just be a blue background. But since this is all we have on the canvas, and we're forced to only look at these slight changes in blue, we can pay more attention to that. Of course, if there's very detailed paintings that have a lot going on, you can pay attention to the details of that, but you'll have to single them out. Whereas this is, you're more focused on smaller details to begin with, right? So you can imagine this as the background of a painting and just trying to study the background. If that might be a helpful way, or it might not. Um, oh yeah, and another reason why this is an expensive and famous painting is Ad Reinhardt, the artist, probably did study painting. He had connections to the art world. He knew what he was doing. He was in New York, and he probably had a good business sense. He probably knew how to sell his stuff to people, right? And so it's not just a matter of like being a good artist. You also have to know people, which kind of sucks, frankly. But that's the way the cookie crumbles in the jungle. Yeah. So I have a lot of videos to show you. I'm obviously not going to show them now. This video by Vox called "Why These All White Paintings Are in Museums and Mine Aren't." This is a really good example of minimalist white paintings. There's two more videos: "The Case for Abstraction" and "Art is Pretentious." I would recommend, if I had to choose one, I'd probably go with "Art is Pretentious," because the other one covers abstraction via minimalism pretty decently. And I have this last one. I could do that. You're not required to watch all these videos. Of course, like there's quiz questions on them. And you could just like find the like 10 seconds that will give you the answer to it. But I would say if you like one video, you'll probably like the others, and they're all worth watching. And I probably spent like a couple hours like watching these videos. They're just so fascinating to me. But of course, I'm a trained artist. I have bias towards enjoying this stuff. But I would argue that I already know those arguments, and I would say these arguments are probably more geared towards people who don't like these things. Like, so people who say art is pretentious, these are the type of people who should be watching this. Okay, whereas I know I'm pretentious, so I don't really need to watch it. But it was wonderful. Okay, so basically what it comes down to, why people get angry at art, because it costs a lot of money, it's famous, they're shown in galleries, and that's pretty much what it comes down to most of the time. Okay. Um, and this video by Adam Ruins Everything, which is a great channel, highly recommend watching it. He kind of talks about how the art market kind of sucks. It's not, so we're talking about a specific gallery system of contemporary art. That system is pretty much dictated by rich people who aren't trained artists. They're more after things that are gonna enhance their reputation. The stupid art speak for that is called cultural capital. You don't need to know that. It's garbage. Um, but again, it's not about artists who are like, the artists who are skilled and thoughtful aren't the ones who are being privileged. They can be. The people who are, again, who are privileged are more dictated by the art market, according to their value, how well they're going to sell, like how much controversy they might have, stuff like that. Or how, I would say, like, also how likely they are to be in art history books, right? That's kind of what dictates that more than like a really good artist, which is kind of baloney, honestly, but that's how it is, and that's why I don't participate in that world anymore. So this is basically what it boils down to. Again, the art market, it showing up in galleries, it costing a lot of money. But when something like this appears in a hotel, like, it's not really gonna cause an outrage, right? Because of the fact that it's less expensive, probably, and it's not shown in a very famous gallery. It's shown in a hotel where regular people are in all the time, right? So if this painting, for example, was $4 million, actually, let's just say like $8 million to be more extreme. That would, and it was talked about in the news, like that would cause a lot of outrage. Oh, my kid could do that. It's just colors and shapes, right? Definitely watch the I Can Do That video, because you really couldn't, honestly, unless you're like a really trained painter. Just because it's not realistic doesn't mean it's not difficult to do. And even if it was easy to do, you didn't do it and you didn't sell it to those hotel. Again, part of it is business and getting your name out there and having connections. If you don't try to do those things, then you don't really have room to complain, honestly. Um, and also, another thing in the video is, if you can say you can do it, then it would be cool to actually see you try to do it and see how that works out. And you'll probably like learn a lot more about painting and you'll become a better person. Um, but going back to the main point, the context does matter of a painting, right? So again, having a hotel abstract painting is not nearly as offensive to people, and people won't really be making tons of YouTube comments about calling it crap and pretentious, unless if, the same way as if it was in a gallery and it was extremely expensive. Okay, and then there's a video about the $150,000 banana. Uh, Hopefully everyone in this class knows about this. Happened late last year, I believe. Um, it's a really, really good video breaking down the realities of it, right? You'll Most of the reaction comes from not knowing much about it and not having understanding the context of it, right? All they see is the high price and a simple banana. Okay, and you'll see how interesting that is in this contemporary age of Instagram and such. And I also want to emphasize that just because I'm a pretentious hipster who likes abstract art, I also like classical art too. I like stuff with a lot of skill. Those things are not mutually exclusive, right? Okay, so I swear I'm not trying to humble brag because this was over a decade ago. But I was at the Louvre, and this was before I studied art history. Basically, it was a $5,000 trip that my high school science instructor did um, every summer, and he kind of chose the places we went to. So like, it wasn't necessarily my choice to go to the Louvre. I was just along for the ride. So we went there, and the Louvre was filled with a bunch of like classical paintings. Um, and this is the one that stuck out to me the most. There's another one called Raft of the Medusa by Theodore Géricault. That was extremely impressive. And the reason this was impressive to me, I should move this out of the way, um, is because first of all, it was huge. Like the humans in here, I guess this is more of a cherub or fairy or sprite or something. They're bigger than real life humans, so it was massive. Unfortunately, I couldn't find a scale of it, but it was 6.5 feet this way and 8.5 feet that way. It was absolutely stunning. Um, but there's other artworks like this, but a huge part is the contrast between the darks and lights here. It's I don't I'm usually someone to be skeptical of it, but saying you have to be there in order to really appreciate is totally true. If I saw this in the art history book, or if I was one of you right now looking at it, I might not be so impressed. But the way the darks and lights interacted, and like the high contrast was just like really, really mind blowing. I just can't believe how impressed it made me. And I was kind of a jaded little jerk back then. That's called I again, I have Italian blood in me, but I don't speak Italian. But I think this word's called chiaroscuro, maybe something like that. And that's just a contrast between light and dark. You don't have to know that unless you study art. I rarely use it day to day, but it's an art appreciation class, so why not? And yeah, this right here, the way I felt, like the way this guy is receiving the moonbeams here, like that's kind of how I felt. I was just like stunned by this. And again, like I'm kind of not the type of person to be stunned by like classical artworks. Um, but I totally was, right? So I had a very similar experience with this work that I have had with plenty of abstract works as well, like giant abstract works. They have when I went to the Museum of Portland, I think it's called, like a couple years ago, they had a really beautiful abstract expressionism show, and I didn't know these paintings were that big, and that was just blew me away. Okay. So one thing you want to think about is sometimes you do want to look at abstract, sometimes you really don't, and you want to look at something like normal, right? Something representational. So just think of it as being in different moods, like music, right? You don't want to be listening to Little Yachty all the time, right? Um, yeah. So So this slide saying like a lot of the paintings were boring, like isn't that kind of pretentious and thinking you're too good for it? So yeah, kind of. But also here are the circumstances why I thought it was boring. So seeing hold on, let me go back to that slide. So seeing like a lot of these paintings, see how there's just so many paintings in one small, relatively small area for their size. Like just seeing a ton of them is kind of overwhelming. And just by seeing something over and over again, it just becomes like less interesting, right? Also, growing up Catholic, there's a lot of paintings that done in that style. So I associated with that with church, which was extremely boring and super claustrophobic for me. And I just have a negative association with that style, which really sucks to have. Um, Also, like that's a very popular style that everyone grows up looking at, right? Everyone knows about like Renaissance paintings, and so just by seeing those over a lifetime, they just made those less special. Um, because I'm the type of person that wants to look at like weird stuff that's like new and exciting, stuff that really makes me blow my mind. And even though this painting was from 1791, I'd never seen any painting with that sort of like with the same use of elements and principles that this painting had. Like it was just really bizarre and powerful, and I had seen nothing like it before, and that's why that stood out. Whereas a lot of these paintings have like very familiar poses that we see um, in like textbooks and like TV shows about art, stuff like that. So a lot of it was just too familiar to me. Where again, this is probably a symptom of our generation where we're bombarded with like cartoons and crazy colors and like all the time, and we have to be entertained constantly. We like a lot of us like just want something new and fresh and exciting, right? We're very demanding. Um, and I think that I'm kind of a symptom of that, right? Oh, and a lot of them do have some sort of history or story that goes along with them, and I don't really care too much about that. I'm kind of shallow in a sense, not technically really, but um, m- a lot of the time, knowing the story doesn't really enhance something for me. It's just like, okay, so it still doesn't look really cool and weird and interesting to me, right? Sometimes it can have a profound effect. Sometimes I've seen a painting that I thought is boring, and I read behind it and it makes me cry. Like that's definitely happened a few times. So there's exceptions, but generally, like that's not what I'm looking for in art. Okay, I'm also kind of a brat. I don't really care about history too much in general, partially for the fact that I can't remember anything very well. I have a terrible, poor memory. I have a hard time picturing things, imagining things. So things that tend to be more towards like history that's based on like facts and knowledge. It's just not for me because like that's just not how my brain functions. Um, it's I'm not like broken or anything. I thought for a long time I was just like a really bad art history student. Like I just sucked at it. But it's more to do with like how my brain functions and coming to terms with the fact that like I can't really place things like in history or time and facts. Like it just doesn't work with my brain. And that's okay. And I'm pretty bad at reading into things. And that's something that's always going to be true. And again, there's exceptions to that, but that's generally for me. Okay, so like, let's say if I wanted to challenge myself and like enjoy these paintings, I would say for me personally, the best thing I could do is just take one of those paintings, print it out, and put it as a poster on my wall. Okay, that way I would be looking at it, and because of the fact that I can't really ignore it, I would probably spend more time with it. Okay, and then I that might eventually intrigue me to look up the story behind it. I would also be more prone to look at details. So this goes back to the problem of a gallery, a museum in general. When you have a lot of different things, you're gonna try to you're you're kind of guilted into like looking at everything, most of the time, right? If you look at just one painting for like 2 hours and ignore everything else, you will probably have a tendency to feel bad, especially if you paid for it. Okay, and I think that's kind of a shame because even I feel that, and I know that's kind of a, an unhelpful thought. So if you just stick to one artwork and really look at one artwork, that's when it's easier for your appreciation to grow for it. So if you hate abstract art, why don't you try putting that as your desktop or your um, phone background? That's what it's called. Um, and then you'll look at it more, and then you'll start noticing more details. You start like looking at the elements and principles more, just getting used to it, just sort of like being okay with it. You might end up not liking it, but you've tried, right? And I think again that's really important, to just put a little bit of effort into it. So yeah, um yeah, again, like, use the skills you learn to appreciate things. Again, you don't have to do it with everything, but you can. And this last point is just one example. Like in a painting, just pretend everyone has a banana up their nose. Like that might make things more interesting, and it might make you just laugh and like look at it differently. And that might make it better for you, and it might make it worse for you. But like, try looking at it from a weird, different perspective. Okay. And this is also very, very important. Appreciating artwork is not the same as liking it. Again, I could appreciate some artwork by an artist I don't like. And I don't like their work. I don't like the specific painting of theirs, but I can be like, okay, like I really do appreciate the thought they put into the composition of how this is broken up into thirds. The color composition of it is really nice and striking, but I just think it's very ugly. You know, it's just not to my taste. So I definitely want to emphasize that, right? And since you're taking this class and it is about art appreciation, um, again, you don't have to like it, but it's not very good to dismiss it most of the time. Sometimes people are just artists are can just troll, so that's fine. Okay. Um, okay. So this slide's just basically for people who aren't here now or aren't gonna watch the live stream or watch the recording. But the reason I'm talking about abstraction and my personal interest is to give a concrete example of what I would do to change my mind, right? So just picture yourself in my shoes, and then instead of abstraction, something that you like that most people don't understand, right? um, and I think it makes more sense to just talk about myself, because like I am literally teaching this class, so I should know what I'm talking about, right? and and so I feel like also having more personal examples is more helpful than just having some abstract. Okay. And so this is essentially what you're going to be doing. Okay. Because there's a lot of videos and stuff, the activity and discussion are going to just be one assignment. So instead of the two things, you're just going to be doing one, and it's going to be worth double the points. Okay. I'm also going to make it so that you can turn it in before the term is over, and I won't count it late. So you can turn it in late. I almost didn't do this because I know people will turn it in the last day and it'll suck for everyone. But you know, again, I want you to take your time with this, and um, you might not have all the time this next week, especially with your writing assignment. So I figured might as well extend the date a little bit. So this is what you'll do. You'll pick an artwork that you think that you hate or think is stupid. You'll do a little bit of research about it and find out about it. Okay. So on Discord, under I think it's called Sharing and Discussion 7. Pardon me. You'll post an image of the piece that you hate or dislike, whatever. Number 2 is you'll have one paragraph that explains why you dislike it. You should probably do it before you do research. That's my recommendation. Um, and make sure to talk about what it is, okay, and how you interpret it. And then the second paragraph is explain how you felt after doing the research. Did you like it? Did it change your mind? Maybe you really don't like it still, but you learn more about it, and maybe you can appreciate it. Or maybe you think, okay, yeah, the artist is full of shit. um, I think it's really important to sort of challenge yourself. So I want you to directly do this, okay? So, and I want to emphasize that if you, and this is in one of the videos as well, if you don't like it and you still don't like it, it helps strengthen your position of why you didn't like it, and you trusted your gut. And I think that's a really good thing, but it's important to try. Nope. So if you don't know where to start, if you don't have something in mind, this is a really good place. A list of notable conceptual art pieces. So conceptual art is generally a field where it's the idea that matters more than the execution or how good it looks. So a lot of people don't like this because it's more about the thought, and a lot of people respond to this saying, like, well, I could think of something. Why aren't I famous? I mean, besides the whole business aspect, like, again, do it. Like, try it. See if that will like get you infamy on Instagram. Yeah, people think it's like low effort, and sometimes it actually can be. But there's many different ways conceptual art pieces could come out. Sometimes like it really, really makes you think. Like, for example, I have a friend who did a conceptual art piece about he's Mexican, and he did a conceptual art piece about like the border and stuff, where um that separated him from everyone else and how he was like seen as inferior. It's hard to explain. I don't remember all the details of it, but like the way I saw that, it was just like, oh crap, that's really messed up. Like, yeah, like this is how Mexican people are treated. They're being seen as inferior. Heck, even my family like will call Mexicans just like from Mexico like slurs. It's pretty bad. And I am Mexican American, just FYI. Um, So yeah, I mean, sometimes there's really powerful artworks like that. Other times it could just be like making fun of the art world, and it's more of a joke on the the art collectors. Sometimes it's just crap and trolling. That's definitely possible. Most people think it's that most of the time, but other times it could also just be like something really personal that someone wants to express. There's a lot of different outcomes of what conceptual art can mean. Again, it's something you should look into case by case. Okay. And there's another series of videos by the Art Assignment, which is one of the channels I link a lot because it's amazing. And this playlist has a bunch of um, videos based on the case for impressionism, the case for video art, et cetera, et cetera. So let's say, for example, you think that surrealism is crap, watch this video, and they'll sort of give you insight into like what surrealism is all about. And what this says on the right side is pick one you don't like or unfamiliar with. Picking one that you know and like is cheating yourself of learning. Again, you could take the easy route out of it, but you're really here to learn. Don't cheat yourself out of your education that you or your parents are paying money for. It kind of sucks, honestly. Like, put effort into it if you can. Like, if you can't, like, if you're depressed, like, that's another matter. But if you're just taking the easy way out, that's the attitude you have towards life, that's not really helpful to anyone, honestly. So I would never recommend that. Okay. So I'm gonna go back to just me. All right. So as far as that was an hour. So yeah, that's the lecture. This is one of those lectures that works much better as a in-class discussion. So I try to make it as helpful and fruitful for you as I could. Okay, so again, also, if you just want to discuss any of that at all, if you have any opinions on that are not connected to the assignment, I would recommend going to in this week's channel, going to do 7. Okay, and just talk about it. So yeah, and also I noticed a couple people posted songs of the day. Thank you, that's awesome. And links, like, more please, it's awesome. All right, so again, thank you so much. I'll be on Discord here and there. Thanks for joining in. Have a wonderful day. Toodles.